Biblionauts. This trip has come to an end. I like to push my boundaries when I travel, especially when I do it alone. Pretty much only when I do it alone. But I also like to listen to the signs. Generally, I tend to do it too late, especially if I am alone, because I trust my will too much. There is such a thing as too much will, and I have it. And every single time that I find myself in a situation in which I should not have put myself through, it tends to be because I overtrusted my capacity to get through something. Which is not to say that I could not get through that thing, but that maybe getting through it meant having to renounce to something, such as my extremities, for example. As you know, I left the other bothy. I was commuting. I was planning to get up to the Highlands and spend New Year's Eve in a bothy alone. But I arrived after a long ordeal. I met someone who drove me far enough into a trail that was gonna get me into the right track to go to this bothy. And I say right track because there was two ways to go to that bothy. One was a shortcut and the other one was the right track. And this person was the one whose opinion I trusted. But then I started hiking through the trail and I saw a jeep that was driving up through the trail, and I, of course, put my finger on it, hitchhiked. And this jeep drove me, and I didn't know where they were driving, but they didn't drive me into the official trail. They drove me into the shortcut. The reason why the previous person didn't want me to go into the shortcut is because it was already bad enough that I was outside at all. I was in a minibus, and the minibus went on two wheels for a moment because of the winds. Scotland, the area in which I am, has had historic winds. We are talking about 55, 60 knot winds, and that is without counting the gusts. When a gust came, I would fall on my ass every single time. The wind was so strong that the rain blinded me. I could not look forward. But I was determined to go. There was no accommodation, no place to stay anywhere. I had already spent like 4, 5, 7 hours in total trying to get there. And it was pretty much the end of the day, and I had a very tight a window of time to get to the bothy. So it was like, let's push through. I'm this far. I'm just gonna push it a little more. And I did, as I often have done in the past. That's why I always say that, I have a yearly near-death experience. Yearly because it's every year that I happen to have an anecdote like this. But the point is that the shortcut was a much less clear path, going through muddier areas and areas that are just not as easy to walk. That, combined with the time of the day, which meant that it was already getting dark, and the wind, made it incredibly easy to get lost. I trust my navigation skills completely. My natural navigation skills, I don't get lost. Or let's say I do get lost sometimes, but I never not find a way back. And I know that I can find a way back from anything. So because of that, and this is because I'm a navigation instructor in underwater in the underwater worlds. I know how to navigate a fucking cave underwater. So I don't think it gets any worse than that. But what I didn't realize is that getting lost was not a problem, right? And the wind was also not a problem. The problem was the combination of all of these different factors. I started hiking. It was like 3 hours away when there was only 1 hour left of daylight. As I'm saying, you have no idea. Like, this wind is something that, most people don't experiment in their whole lives. It was strong. I've seen hurricanes in the Caribbean in hurricane season. I've been in 40 knot winds before. It was very, very windy when I went to the other bothy. The other bothy had a 25 knot winds. Here we are talking about twice that. Wind so strong that I don't know. I would not know how to exemplify it. When we were driving with imagine a minibus going on two wheels because of the wind. But on top of that, when we were driving on the minibus, we were passing through a bridge, and she was driving really slow, and she was like, "Whoa, there's no water in in the river. Why is that? Um, because not, you know, with the amount of rain that we were having, you'd expect to have water in the river. And then we looked up the hill, and the waterfall, the massive waterfall from which that river was running down through the in between the bridge, under the bridge, was not falling but flying. All the water of the waterfall was going towards the sky, just getting lost in the air, vanishing into vapor. So the river kind of like disappeared. Everything was dried because the wind going up the hill would drag all the water back. So you would see water going upstream on a fucking steep hill. So that kind of wind, a crazy amount of wind. As I was walking, I wanted to hurry up, but I could not, because anytime I looked forward and a drop of water from the rain got in my eye, it felt like someone threw sand on my face, and I couldn't see from that eye for minutes. So I could only look down like this and move my feet slowly. Again, I had no alternative at this point. My only alternative would have been to knock in someone's door, which is what I ended up doing. That's a spoiler alert. But yeah, I kept going, and I kept going, and I kept going, and then I was like, at this point I thought that, you know, the light, the sunset was gonna be 4:30, because I started my thing at 2:30, and I was like, 2 hours, I can make it in 2 hours. But actually here in Scotland, in the Highlands, it's 3:30, and I was lucky that it was full moon. That was a helpful thing. I had a torch, and I also have an amazing solar battery that has a strong light as well. So I relied on that at the beginning. But the point is that before the light went off, I kept hiking and hiking. It was muddy, you know, this area of Scotland that is just fields in which you can only find birds and deer, and there's no roads or anything. Much more remote than where I was before, much more remote than anywhere in Galloway Forest, and much more remote than anywhere else in this island. It's all just kind of like, it's not just water, it's like muddy water, so you keep sinking as well. It's kind of, some parts are like genuinely like quicksand, and it's not easy to navigate. So I just kept going forward and kept going forward, and as I was going forward, yeah, there was a moment, a point of inflection, when I looked at the map, because I had a map. Of course, in the map you still have to tell where you are. So I was looking at the map, and because there was two lakes, it was easy to tell where I was. But I realized that once I passed the two lakes, it was going to be much harder to tell where I was. And I had only a vague idea where the bothy was. But because of the wind, I could not see. And if I cannot see further than like 10 centimeters ahead of my toes in the feet, I cannot navigate, because I don't know if I'm walking into a cliff, or I'm walking into a mountain, or what am I walking into. To the point in which at some point I started walking and walking and walking, and suddenly like something felt weird on my feet, like I was stepping in a different kind of ground, and it was just snow. It was snow. And the snow was getting deeper, and basically all the trail was suddenly covered by snow, and everything was snow. And I looked forward, and because of the rain and the wind and the snow, I only could see white. I could not see anything. My visibility was zero. It was very oniric, but it meant that that's as much as I can take, and I needed to turn back. I had pushed already too far, because it was already dark, and you don't want to be out there on the storm of the century like that, in a situation like that. You don't want to be, you don't want to experience something like that. I was willing to go through that. I always say, you know, like, if you're gonna do something like this, prepare yourself, or be willing for things to go wrong. And I am willing for things to go wrong. But this, since my diving years, this might have been the nearest death experience I have had. Like, since I was sort of like scuba diving and cave diving and doing these kind of things, in which it's kind of like every now and then I'll have to experience something like that. I also whitewater kayaking. I never had anything like that climbing, but with kayaking as well. Generally it has always to do with water. But wind has always been my Achilles heel, since once I was trapped in a tornado as a kid. Yeah, I started getting back and trying to walk back. I was carrying a lot of things, and at the beginning I was running, a bit scared at this point, to be honest. And I always know that situation is not too serious when I am scared, because as I have been many times in sort of like a life or death kind of a scenario, I can very easily. One second, I'm gonna add some the lighting for this video. It's a fire that I'll show you at the end, but I don't want it to go because it's also what's keeping me warm. So just adding some wood. Yeah, what I was saying. Generally when I'm afraid I still have a good margin from real danger, because what happens, and this is what happened, I started running with this very heavy, we're talking about easily a 25 kilo backpack. I always over pack. I don't mind weight, but this was very, very heavy, and I was running, which is not what you're supposed to do with 25 kilos on your back. And also this kind of ground, it meant that if I sprained my ankle, I'd be not completely lost, because I have had to hike before with a sprained ankle and get back into civilization. But I'd be in a critical situation, more critical than it already was. So I started running, and at some point I fell down, and then I fell down again, and then I realized, okay, this is critical. And then I realized, okay, I don't have that margin in which I can allow myself to sort of like panic and just run in X or Y direction. I never suspend thinking. My panicking doesn't look like the kind of panicking that you would sort of like expect of like someone not thinking, but I was definitely giving in into fear a little bit by starting to run without having first devised a plan. So I sat down again, 55 knot winds, rain and everything. I sat down just to think, and whenever this happens, whenever I actually come so close to a situation in which my life is in danger, in this case my life was not in danger, but my fingers and my toes were, because I realized that I could not use my hands at all. That means I'm not able to light a fire, that means I'm not able to set any tent or anything like that, which, I mean, anyways, the wind would not allow it, either of them, but I'm not able to do anything. If you cannot use your hands, you are completely cancelled as a functional being. And because of the wind, it was incredibly hard to get them to work, to warm them back up, and I could not open the zipper to put the hands through the raincoat into the pockets close to my belly, which is what I was trying to do. So I was like, okay, I need to get rid of stuff. So I opened my backpack, and anything that was not extremely crucially important for survival, I got rid of. So I got rid of my books, the dawn of everything. I got rid of my notebook, in which I have had written some of the best thoughts that I have had so far. I came here to write in the first place, and I had been writing, and especially these last few days that I haven't precisely been making videos, although you might not know, because to you they might all come all at once, but there was a stage of time in which I was not doing anything else but writing, and not writing anything but writing, making the first steps towards a novel that I am writing, and that was getting a very significant shape. It was starting to feel like a thing rather than a vision, and I threw that as well. I threw everything that had any weight. I threw the axe. I only kept food for calories, because calories keep you warm. Not any food. I only kept like the dates and the nuts and water, the water that I had left, and I had my trekking poles, and I did keep my notebook. At first, I threw the other two notebooks, the one with the book name written tag, but I didn't throw the notebook of this novel that I'm writing, in which it has been sort of like handwriting my thoughts throughout this trip. And I also kept the dawn of everything, but they were on the top of the backpack, and further on they fell, because this hiking was almost like not scrambling, because it was not a rock, but just like jumping from little island that doesn't sink to another little island that doesn't sink, and everything in between was just water, so that I don't sink. And that meant that it was a very dynamic way back. But the point is that, at some point, when I am in a situation like this, I always suddenly cancel my feelings, my personality, my thought, and I become a machine for survival. Every other time that I have been in a situation like this, in which I am close to, when I am in actual danger, not danger in the sense of like, oh, I'm scared, this could be bad, but actual danger, it always happens that I just become some robot whose only possible program is self-preservation. Nothing else matters. So as I said, I got rid of everything that I need no feelings whatsoever in that moment. Put the backpack back and prepare to run for 2 hours throughout these muddy fields, using only natural navigation. The direction of the wind was my main point of reference. At some point I was running, I jumped, I had to, there was a long swamp and I had to jump through it, and I thought I got through it, but the thing that looked like an island in the middle was not, and the whole thing was frozen. So imagine like a frozen lake, but where underwater, under the ice rather than water, you have mud. That's what it was. So I fell in it, and I fell all the way up to my chest, up to here, and it was like quicksand. I was sinking on that thing. Of course, at this point, I was completely calm, because that's the only way that you get out of situations like this. It's the only way of being able to survive the many other situations like this that I've had in my life. So I just climbed. I took my backpack off, and because it's of a significant science, I used it. Climbed out of it, took my legs out. Once I got out, I pulled the backpack out of the swamp and kept running. Wet and everything, didn't care about anything anymore other than getting to what I knew more or less that was the coast, roughly. Having coast next to you is always an amazing reference point, because it's not one point on the map, but it's a whole area. Once you reach to a certain point in which the coast starts, you have 2 directions. Rivers are also an amazing way of reference, but the main thing was the wind, because it was restless. It was it would not give you truce, so you could not at any point ignore its direction, and it didn't change. It was, for the whole time, it was see if I was going like that, southwesterly. It was coming from the south, so it was northeasterly. It was coming from the south, so that means that it was northeasterly. Yeah, I think so. The point is that I kept running. Well, there was a river as well. I had to. It was too deep and too wide to jump. I had jumped a few rivers before in the backpack and me, but this one was too deep and too wide to jump. So I had to pretty much swim across. Again, Scotland, the winter, fucking crazy. At some point, I got into a farm, saw a light, knocked in the door, found civilization, and got this house for a couple of days for a really nice price, because it was an emergency. And that's it. I'm still recovering, honestly. My back is a bit fucked. This morning I went back to the place where I left my things and to recover most of them, but because the notebook and the book were not left in the same place where I left everything else, I could not find them, because everything else I could tell where I left them and the things, but the notebook and the book fell along the way at some point, so I couldn't find them. I went today, because today the wind is much, it's only 25 knots, only 30 knots winds, so still very windy, but not what I had last time, what I had yesterday. It was crazy. I know I've met people, I've spoken with people here who's like very old and been living here their whole lives, and they said that they don't remember, they cannot recall a day with as much wind as we had yesterday. So that's basically the very end of my ordeal. I was coming here for a coming to terms with myself and my thoughts, and spending some time alone. I did get to spend time alone in the Galloway Forest. That was really nice, but I definitely was not expecting for this kind of coming to terms. I think anecdotes tend to be nicer to tell than to live. When you have a really good anecdote, it generally means that at some point you did not want to be there. but it has been lived through, and I cannot say that in some ways I did not enjoy, especially the moment in which, you know, at the end of the day, even when I could not use my hands and my feet, also when I got here, my feet, one of my toes is still purple. I'm gonna have to check that out. But there was a moment in which, like, some of my toes specifically, they were almost black. The kind of purple that they had was almost black, and that was painful and everything. But running for your life, knowing that you are actually running for your life, or at least for, again, I would have probably survived the night because I had enough fuel to make a fire even with the wind, and I had waterproof stuff inside plastic bags on my backpack as well that I could have maybe changed and survived. But I would have probably lost a couple of fingers because of the necrosis, because of the cold, maybe the nose, who knows. So, without being melodramatic, I did enjoy running for your life. I feel like situations like this in which you are actually like doing, where suddenly self-preservation becomes the most important thing in the world, are very interesting, and especially if you respond to them in a logical way. Some people just get completely irrational and do exactly the opposite of what they should be doing, but probably because I've been trained to deal with people who panics, because of all my sort of like adventure sports related professions. I tend to respond to them in the most logical sense. I tend to just suddenly, I go from human to machine at some point, you know. I do plan my trips and everything. After all, you know, I've been doing this for a while. But there is a part of me that was like, you know, I've been cave diving alone in, you know, underwater streams that were pushing you and trying to suck me in, and I got out of that. I don't think a bit of wind on a field is gonna kill me. And that's the kind of arrogance that can kill you. So it's always good to be humbled by the elements, which are one of the very few things in this planet that can humble me at this point. So that's my story. That's pretty much the end of this trip. There's only one video left to make, and that is the best books of 2023, the best books I have read in 2023. And that will probably be made right after this one and posted one day after, with 1 day of difference. At some point in January, I suppose, that you will be getting these videos, because I still don't have internet. But between then and now, I will probably find some lonely place and in a much more welcoming environment in terms of it's welcoming to life, and just rest a little bit because my back is a little bit fucked. So I'll do probably a 8-hour yoga session or something. Let me know if you want a follow along video for yoga. I'll make a follow along video, freestyle or something, of my own yoga routine. Yeah, I'll probably be back. I mean, I think a couple of friends have been telling me to go back to London. They are making a party for New Year's Eve, and they also want to make me literate when it comes to video games. They are video game video game fans, video gamers, gamers. Yeah, I think gamers is the word. And you know, they want to convince me that gaming is just an art as high as literature and films, which I have never denied. But since they want me to go into their house and feed me and show me how good video games can be, I think I'll take them up into that proposal, because some people think that, you know, doing these kind of trips and this kind of adventures means that I don't like my comfort, that I don't like laying down. I always say, you know, like, if you really like, for example, sitting down on a sofa and having a warm drink, the best way that you can enjoy that is if first you do a marathon. So I hike on the rain in the cold in winter in Scotland alone, so that I can then enjoy going and spending 3 days playing video games with a couple of friends and staying warm and having a warm shower. There is no words for the feeling of having a warm shower after something like what I went through yesterday. And those of you who have felt it know that it's impossible not to appreciate it then. It is very easy not to appreciate certain things that we have, certain comforts that we have, when you have them every single day and take them for granted because you never experience anything else. But I have very much experienced every single possible way of being that I have been able to access, and I plan to continue to do so. I will come back here. I mean, I went back to the place in which I thought I was gonna lose not my life, but my fingers the day after having done that. So I don't think no regrets here. That's what I'm trying to say. But I just wanted to let you know because I thought it was an interesting story, and maybe you can take something out of it. At least you can mock me or amuse yourselves or whatever. And yeah, I'll make now the last video that I wanna make this year, because the next couple of days I'm gonna sit back and relax and think and try to recall the many words, many pages that I had written on that notebook and that now are lost in time. I cannot say that it's bad. I cannot say that is a bad thing, because more than once I have lost some piece of writing, a manuscript or something like this. This was a manuscript, and like manuscript from the etymology meaning written by hand. And sometimes by trying to recall these things, I have come up with a better version, because they, in some ways, if you write something and you lose it, I mean, it's not like it didn't come out of you, it's on you, you can still recall it. And sometimes starting it with the awareness of the whole thing improves it, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes, it's the moment that counted. And I felt like some of the things in there were very situational. I don't think they're gonna be written the same way, but things happen. Things like this happen all the time, and it's not the end of the world. So I'll just have to write more, and that's always a delight. That's always a pleasure. So that's me for today. I am here next to the fire. This is the fire, and I think that is all for today. Thank you, Booktube. I'll see you on the other side.